For nearly 1,000 years, there was an unwritten law in European art. Only one figure was allowed to look directly at the viewer, face on with a symmetrical, unwavering gaze, and that was Jesus Christ. Everyone else, kings, queens, generals, was painted in profile or looking slightly to the side to signal their humility before God. But in the winter of 1500, a 28-year-old man named Albrecht Dürer decided to shatter that silence. He sat down and painted a self-portrait that still stops people in their tracks today at the Alte Pinakothek in Munich. He dressed himself in an opulent dark brown coat. His hair was a masterpiece of long flowing locks painted with impossibly fine details. But the real scandal was his eyes. By turning his face directly towards us, Dürer was engaging in a massive public act of social theatre. He was using a wooden panel and oil paint as a tool of identity. He was signaling to the world, I am not a laborer, I am a creator, I am a sovereign individual. He wasn't just recording what he looked like, he was constructing a version of himself that was superior to the reality. He was performing a status that he hadn't fully earned yet, using the canvas to bridge the gap between his current life and his ultimate ambition. I'm Rahul Devinder Malik, and this is Performance and Props. Today, the selfie. To understand why that gaze was so radical, we have to understand the world Dürer was trying to escape. If you could step into a time machine and travel back to the city of Nuremberg in the year 1500, you would find yourself in a world of profound heavy silence. This was a world defined by a very rigid vertical social hierarchy. In the medieval mind, you didn't choose who you were born into a slot. If your father was a blacksmith, you were a blacksmith. If you were a peasant, you looked at the ground when the carriage of a nobleman passed by. In this world, art had a very specific humble function. Artists were craftsmen, essentially in the same social class as people who made your shoes or thatched your roof. You hired them to paint a saint for a chapel, and the artist's job was to remain invisible. But Dürer refused to be invisible. He was obsessed with his own image, spending hours sketching his own hands, his own face, and his own reflections. He was perhaps the first person in history to understand the power of a personal brand. 500 years later, we have traded the oil paint for a digital sensor and the wooden panel for a piece of glass in our pockets. But the psychological work is exactly the same. Every time you reach into your pocket, unlock your phone, and flip the camera lens towards your own face, you are stepping into Dürer's stage. To understand how we got here, we have to look at the prop itself. For almost 2 centuries, the camera was designed as a window. Whether it was a massive mahogany box on a tripod in the 1840s or a sleek silver Leica in the 1950s, the physical orientation was always outward. You stood behind the machine. You looked through a tiny glass viewfinder at the world. You directed your attention at the world around you, a landscape, a family gathering, or a historic moment in the street. The photographer was by definition the observer. To be both the photographer and the subject at the same time was a clumsy, difficult feat. But then, in the year of 2010, the anatomy of our social world underwent a radical mutation. Steve Jobs stood on a stage in San Francisco and introduced the iPhone 4. For the first time, a mass-market smartphone had a lens on the front. Apple didn't call it the selfie camera. They called it a tool for FaceTime. They marketed it as a way to see your grandmother or your children while you talk to them. But the world had a different plan. Within months, that front-facing lens transformed the smartphone into a mirror. But it's important to realize that this is a very specific, very deceptive kind of mirror. When you look into a traditional glass mirror in your bathroom, the feedback is honest. It shows you the stray hair, the tired eyes, the reality of your morning. But the digital mirror in your pocket provides what I call a pre-filtered reality. Even before you press the shutter button, the software in your phone is making 1,000 decisions for you. It is adjusting the light to make your skin look warmer. It is sharpening the focus on your pupils, and most importantly, it is showing you a live, high-definition preview of your own performance. You aren't just taking a photo, you're composing an identity in real time. You tilt your chin down to sharpen the line of your jaw. You squint your eyes just a fraction to look more confident. You move 3 inches to the left to catch the soft light coming through the window. You are waiting for the exact moment when the reflection on the screen matches the ideal version of yourself that lives in your head. The front-facing camera has created a psychological feedback loop where we are simultaneously the actor on the stage and the audience in the front row. We are constantly checking the mirror to see if our performance is holding up. It has shifted our entire orientation toward life. We no longer ask, is this a moment worth remembering? We ask, is this a moment where I look like the person I want the world to see? The tool has moved from being an instrument of documentation to an instrument of identity construction. We don't take selfies to remember where we were. We take them to prove who we are. Now let's go deeper into the why. Why do we feel this relentless, almost exhausting compulsion to share these constructed images with the world? It is because we have entered a new kind of economy, the identity economy. In this world, we aren't just buying products for what they do, we are buying them for what they allow us to say about ourselves. We are all participating in a form of social theater, and the objects we surround ourselves with are the props we use to make our performance believable. When you take a selfie, you are putting on a theatrical display of your ideal self. This isn't your raw self, the one that worries about the mortgage or feels insecure at a dinner party. This is the version of you that has been optimized, curated, and polished for public consumption. Think about the specific archetypes we see every day on our screens. Consider the authentic explorer. This is the person who takes a selfie at the top of a hiking trail. They look sweaty, their hair is a bit messy, they look exhausted, but the framing is perfect. The mountain range in the background is majestic, and the caption talks about finding peace in nature. This is a performance. They are using the prop of the mountain to signal an identity of health, spiritual depth, and rugged individualism. Or consider the cerebral professional. This person takes a selfie in a sunlit home office. In the corner of the frame, there is a very specific, slightly obscure book on economics or philosophy. They are performing intellectual authority. The book isn't there to be read in that moment. It is there to act as a tool of identity. It tells the viewer, I am the kind of person who reads this. Even the messy selfie, the one taken in a bedroom with piles of laundry in the background, is a performance. It is the performance of relatability. It's a way of saying, look how comfortable I am with my own imperfections, which in our hyper-polished world has ironically become a very high-status thing to signal. For those of us in business, in marketing, or in leadership, we have to realize that our customers are no longer looking for quality as their primary reason to buy. Quality is now the baseline. It's expected. What they are actually searching for are tools, what I think of as identity tools that help them with their own daily performance. Think about a high-end coffee shop. You've seen the scene. Someone spends $7 on a latte and then they spend 10 minutes moving a pair of sunglasses, a notebook, and the coffee around the table to get the perfect shot before they even take a sip. From a utility perspective, this is irrational. The coffee is getting cold. But from an identity perspective, it is a perfectly rational investment. That customer isn't just buying caffeine. They are hiring that coffee shop to play a role in their life story. The minimalistic furniture, the expensive Italian espresso machine, the specific pattern in the milk foam, these are all props. When that customer takes a selfie with that latte, they are signaling to their tribe, I have taste, I have disposable income, I value aesthetics, I am a person who belongs in this space. If you are selling a product today and you think you are just solving a problem, you are competing in a race to the bottom. You are in the utility economy where the only way to win is to be the fastest or the cheapest. But if you understand the theater of your customer's life, you can compete in the identity economy. You have to ask yourself, does my product make my customer look better in their own digital mirror? Does it help them bridge the gap between who they are on a rainy Tuesday morning and who they want to be on their best day? If your product doesn't serve that performance, it is effectively invisible. We don't buy things, we buy versions of ourselves. And in the world of front-facing cameras, the most valuable thing you can offer someone is a more confident reflection. So, how do we take this understanding of the selfie and the ideal self and actually apply it to our work and our lives? It starts by turning the lens around and looking at your own stagecraft. Point 1. Stop selling features and start providing tools for identity. Look at your website, your social media, or your sales deck. Are you listing specs? Are you talking about efficiency, speed, or durability? That's fine for the rational logical brain, but the rational brain isn't the part of us that takes selfies. To win today, you need to identify the ideal self of your target audience. Are they trying to be the innovator, the reliable expert, the rebel? Once you know the role they want to play, you must design your brand to be the perfect tool for that role. Point 2. Design for the identity loop. Every single touchpoint with your brand should be a moment where the customer feels more like their ideal self. This isn't just about making things pretty, it's about making them expressive. If you run a software company, does your user interface make the user feel like a pro while they use it? If you run a consultancy, does your final report look like something a high-level executive would be proud to have sitting on their desk during a meeting? We need to create selfie moments in every industry. We need to provide the catchlight in the customer's eye. Point 3. The ethics of the mirror. Finally, we have to be careful. The performance of the ideal self can be deeply exhausting. We live in a culture where people feel a constant nagging pressure to be on at all times. As a brand or a leader, you have a choice. You can either exploit that insecurity or you can help resolve it. The most powerful and enduring brands of the next decade won't just help people look better, they will help people feel more aligned. They will provide the tools for an identity that is grounded in values, not just filters. Identity isn't a destination we reach, it's a performance we give every single day. And in the world defined by front-facing camera, your most important job is to make sure your customers have the best possible tools to play the most important role of their lives, themselves. I'm Rahul Devendra Malik. Thank you for listening.